Hey, everybody, welcome to the Better Every Shift podcast. My name is Aaron Zamzow. I am the host. I am also a firefighter EMT in Madison, Wisconsin. I work for the Madison Fire Department. I also own and operate a company called Fire Rescue Fitness and been writing for Fire Rescue One and other fire related periodicals for over 10 years. And I am super excited to bring this concept with you, this podcast, this adventure, but I'm not doing it alone. I actually am partnering here, and I like to call her the co-captain. She's actually the one that really drives the ship here. Is Janelle Fasquette. She has been an editor and is the editor in chief of Fire Rescue One, and she has been making me sound more intelligent for years. And now she's got to do it in a different format. So good luck with that. But welcome, Janelle.
Well, thanks. It's good to be here. I'm happy to co-captain the ship with you. I'm really excited about it. And this has been, a long time coming. So I'm excited we're here.
Yeah, just to kind of brief everybody on what we're going to be doing here. This concept, this better every shift concept, it started off mainly a couple of years ago. Janelle approached me and she said, you're kind of an energetic, I think you use quirky maybe guy, but I'd really love to try to do a podcast where we get different personalities, um, influential people of not only the fire service but maybe of outside the fire service, and just sit down with them one on one, bring them into more of a real life situation, and talk about everything from the fire service to lifestyle to family. And we knocked around quite a few different titles to this. Some were some were great, I thought, but then others were declined. Correct?
Yes. Yeah, we had about, I don't know, what do you say? Like 100 ideas floating around at different times.
Yeah, yeah, and so as we kept coming up with ideas, uh, the powers that be behind us, a lot of times would just say no. And one day we were talking about, well, what do we really? What's the essence of this? And the essence of the podcast is to really be better. And what we want to try to give to you, the listener, are tidbits of information, tidbits of motivation to help you and motivate you to be better, whether it's with learning something skill related in the fire service, learning how to better yourself in relationships, being more healthy, more fit, w- and maybe and sometimes just more informed culturally about what's going on inside the fire service and outside. And you know, Fire Rescue One and everything. I think a lot of our articles are about are just embracing that concept. We write to try to educate, and we try to educate because we want those around us to be better, including ourselves. And that's kind of what we're going to try to do, and we're going to try to have a little bit of fun. Correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was the whole idea. We kept thinking about what does this really boil down to? And it's, with your energy and enthusiasm, you're always so positive. And like that's what just kept making me think about this idea of like bringing people together to talk about big topics, hot topics, but also have some fun with it and just see where it takes us. And I think you're the best person to help us do that. I think it's going to be a fun ride.
I appreciate it. It already has been, and when we talk about being better, um, first of all, for those that don't understand, like what Janelle's role has been over the years in the fire service, she has been behind a lot of the different surveys. She's been behind a lot of the different influential articles. She has basically contacts with every single influential person within the fire service. So a lot of you will get to know her a little bit better. She will begrudgingly doing that. She likes to be behind the scenes, but she has so much to offer. And the people that we've already been in contact with, and I'm super excited to just try to sit down with a lot of influential people, people that I've read about through the years, have written a lot of the materials that I've studied, um, and try to just sit down at a level where we all experience these highs and lows in our career. We all experience difficulties in relationships, whether it be family, difficult with the calls we see and the nature of the business. And the other idea behind being better, it doesn't matter if you are a chief, volunteer, career, someone who's trying to get involved with the fire service, someone who supports the fire service, trying to give you usable things that you can, take from this. And maybe it's a laugh, maybe it's a little bit of motivation, maybe it's a tear. But I'm super happy to be doing this and to, you know, be able to hopefully deliver on your concept, Janelle.
Oh, I have no doubt whatsoever.
So speaking of the concept, our very first guest for this very first podcast, and if I haven't mentioned it, thank you all so far for staying with us and listening because we are talking about somebody who really epitomizes what we're talking about, being better. And it's Deputy Chief Frank Leeb from FDNY. You will see in our interview just some of the things where you think this is one of the he's heading one of the largest training divisions, one of the largest fire departments, and there were some subtle things that I took from this interview, and I hope you all will too, listening. That he epitomizes every single day working on himself, trying to be better, and I'm super excited for this. So, unless you have anything else to add, Janelle, let's bring on
Let's
Chief
get
Lee.
into it.
Um, for once, I'm at a loss for words. Janelle's over there smiling, laughing because our guest today is Deputy Chief Frank Leeb from FDNY, and I'm a little bit uh, he's kind of he's a celebrity kind of guy for a lot of us because he's everywhere right now. He's talking about a lot of the things that can really make a difference in your career, from health, wellness, leadership, fireground command. And so I'm not going to spend too much time telling dad jokes or movie quotes today because we want to get into it with Chief. And real briefly, if you don't know who Deputy Chief Frank Leeb is, you really need to do some research because this particular individual can really help you be fired up to learn more, to better your career, to educate you on fireground operations, on leadership, on cancer reduction. He's a Deputy Assistant Chief in FDNY, currently serving as the Acting Chief of Training, Chief of the Department's Contamination Reduction Work Group. He's been a member of FDNY since '92 and East Farmingdale Fire Department in Long Island since 1983. He just wrote a really great article for us here at Fire Rescue One on their inaugural State of the Industry survey, what firefighters want in 2022, about incident command training. And Janelle, I think, will cue that article up. And, the basis there was that we're doing okay, but we really need more command presence. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But I just wanted to say thank you, Chief, for being here. And we were talking a lot off, camera and off recording, just about just being better every shift and a lot of different dimensions that includes. And it's great that we were just saying that you experience a lot of the challenges that we do as firefighters, as lieutenants. You have the home challenges, you have the health and wellness challenges, you have the cell phone challenges, right? Like you're getting a lot of different messages. For you had stress trying to get back to home, to an area where you can do the podcast. Like that's real common. And it's great to see you here. And we were talking, like, again, off screen, because a lot of times we think, oh, he can write all these articles and he has all this experience, but yet we all are in this kind of together. We experience these different things. And so when we talk about being better every shift, like for you personally, what does that mean? What do you do every single day to be who you are?
Well, I appreciate you having me on the program. So it's funny, you didn't tell your viewers that before we came on you were wearing a Tigger costume, right? So, but we'll let that pass. But I
they
think
can they can ask in the comments section, and I'll describe kind of why. But we have you and I have a bond through Tigger. We'll
yes,
just say that.
yeah. Thank you. That's a good explanation for it. So being better every day is being into the job, right? Being into your profession, regardless of what your profession is, right? Obviously, we're talking about firefighters, but for me, it's something that was instilled in me very young into my FDNY career, and it was read something fire related every day, every tour. just be better, right? So you're not the same person you were yesterday, right? Just
Hopefully, yeah.
cells die off, new cells. You're a different person, and the idea is, right? That you're striving to be a better version of yourself every day. And how do you do that, right? And it's professional development, it's reading, it's teaching, it's doing all those different things that incorporate that into what you're, how you become a better version, right? Be better every day.
Yeah, yeah, and I got to tell you, I saw you speak at a conference recently, and you had the best walk up music that I've heard in a long time, and a little ACDC came up, and it really fired up. A lot of people I talked about, it motivated them, and within there, you said, read something fire related, 10 minutes, at least 10 minutes every single day. Just pick something up. Go to Fire Rescue One. Go to pick up a fire periodical. I think one of the things you've been doing recently is kind of going through some of your former calls or former incidences, correct? And is that part of that too, right? That at least for you, I imagine that's what it is you look at how could I have been better at that particular incident or call?
Well, you should always critique your operation, right? You should. I mean, I'm my hardest critic, and so I evaluate the operation, any operation I operate at, and see how, if I had that same incident again, what would I do differently? Would I do anything differently? And then how could the firefighters under my command do it differently? And I've done that for my entire career. And for the past 13 or 14 years, I've written about some of my experiences, particularly, I started writing for our internal magazine, WNYF. And, I've written close to 25 articles for them now. And the genesis for most of those articles was I went to an incident and there was something that I learned. And I have been a student of my craft. I have been into my job, reading something, learning all I can, that if I didn't know enough about it, there's certainly other people out there that don't. And I want to pass along that information and that knowledge, because that will make somebody better the very next time they go out the door. If you read any article that I've written for any publication, there will be actionable intelligence that will make you better the next time you go out the door. Otherwise, I wouldn't waste the time writing an article. If I'm not teaching you something that will make you better, why bother?
Yeah, right. And I'll tell you, you and I, again, I've had a pleasure of just being able to be around you for a couple conferences, and we talked about a fire that you had this last year, the Twin Parks fire, and you and I talked about it for about an hour one day, and you have looked at that over and over again, and it's become kind of a way for you to recover in a way in certain instances, right? Like you just try to look at all the different things, and you put I can't remember, you said something like you looked at every single, there was a multiple fatality fire, and you looked at a lot of different things and broke that down, and that was a way you kind of dealt with the recovery and the emotional side as well, by trying to make yourself better mentally to deal with that emotion.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to look at all the aspects of the fire. So, in reviewing our fire marshals did an amazing job at interviewing everybody, the residents, the firefighters, everybody. I've read the company operation reports. I stopped keeping track when I was at 30 hours that I've put into piecing the fire together and reviewing it to see, and then trying to glean out of it what are the teaching points. What are the points is there anything that we can change, policies or procedures? And it may not necessarily be something that you can change, but we had an after action review, both on fire and EMS side. And, we're trying to just make sure that any lessons learned and more importantly, lessons reinforced as well, that we pass that along. I mean, we had a chief's class that was in following that fire. They were in class, and we took them to the site of that fire and walked them around the building, because experiences to a large degree are transferable. So when I put these future incident commanders in front of the building and say, okay, this is what you have. Okay, great. Now this just happened. When are you going to call for more people? When do you realize you need an additional alarm? how are you going to sector this operation? When would you consider doing this? What if you had this? And you're able to sit there in front of the building and then look at that and visualize that. And that experience that we had on that day, to a large degree, becomes their experience.
Mhm.
So when they have something that even remotely resembles that, or even part of that, right? It could be just a part of that where they're overwhelmed with a couple of victims, or they have some other incident, other part of it that's going on, that will be part of what they pull up, that they recall, and they'll have something to draw on. Because that's the key, right? Transferring experiences is to make sure that you're better prepared the next time you go out the door, that you have experiences that come up that are similar enough to give you a good frame of reference for how you're going to implement your tactics. And more importantly, for an incident commander, what is your strategy?
Right, and we talked about like the state of the industry. We want, and we, I think, they were a lot of us said, hey, it's great that we have some incident command training, but this is the best, one of the best ways to do it, right? Like as you were saying, I'm teaching my future incident commanders. Let's look at what we did, and another thing that I've heard you say is that we have to be all right with saying, hey, we could have done better, or we could have done something a different way, right? Like we have to be able to say that, and to have that conversation.
Yeah, and even if your tactics and strategy um, was successful, right? We just want to make sure that we evaluate them and review them to make sure that that even if we say, well, what if we would have did this, and the outcome may have been disastrous if we did something different, right?
Mhm.
But at least to have that conversation, and that's what we do when we have our post-incident review, and everybody's talking about it. And then a smaller fire, we would have that on scene immediately afterwards. The incident commander, the battalion chief or deputy chief would call the units over, something I've done, many times, and just say, hey, I'll ask, how'd you get to the roof? How'd you go here? What'd you do? What'd you do differently? So all that type of stuff, it's all learning, right? And it's a cross pollination of ideas. When I tell the firefighters that what I was thinking, and I said, when I saw you going up the ladder, this is what I was thinking. I'm giving them leader's intent, right? I'm imparting them
Yeah.
some of that stuff that they may not even be considering, right? And that's all that cross pollination that's critically important from firefighters to leaders. And it's the importance also of an incident commander or chief officer speaking to the firefighters, right? Going to the firehouse and speaking to them and letting them know some of your concerns when you're on scene. They're better able to help us and we're able to better help them when we have that two-way communication.
So one of the best
Chief.
ways, yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Janelle. Sorry.
Oh, it's all right. No, I was curious. One of the articles that ran in our What Firefighters Want in 2022 was written by Captain Brad French, and he talked about the importance of after action reviews. And one of the data points that came out of that, I'm looking at the results over here now. About 1/3 of respondents said uh, incident commanders at their department rarely or never complete an after action review. Only 23% reported that ICs conduct them often. The balance was in the sometimes category, around 40%. But I'm just curious if that number surprises you. About 1/3 of people who never or rarely get AARs.
Yeah, so that's surprising me. That's definitely surprising. But I wonder, maybe they're not doing it on scene. Like, I wonder if they're doing it. Maybe they're incorporating it into training down the road. I wonder if we just pigeonhole it into calling it an after action review, but they're learning something from it because, like, I find it difficult because even in my department, right? If we don't do a formal after action review, any firefighter worth his salt is going back to the firehouse, and that company is talking about not only their actions but the actions of everybody else. I mean,
Yeah.
In firehouses I've been in as both an officer and as a chief, even if they're not talking about it at scene, we're definitely talking about it when we get back to quarters. So for us, on our major incidents, I have a post-incident review team. I have staff that's their full-time job. So they are
Mhm.
doing these after action reviews. And one of the good parts about that for me is, as the chief of training, I get the notes, not necessarily who said what they said, right? But if there's
Mhm.
any type of comments that we see a lot of times, I'm able to see if we have recurring themes. And that means I need to concentrate on that, on training, not just for those that were there, but I need to get that out to the entire job. And we can do that with our tips from training. There's a couple of ways that we can pivot and really get and broadcast stuff out to the entire department. And that's happened a couple of times where we've seen something 3 or 4 times and we're like, hey, let's pay attention to this, and it comes down to being a high reliable organization, right? Which fire service is a high reliable. The stakes are pretty high. Lives hang in the balance. It's like an aircraft carrier. The stakes are high. A nuclear reactor. The stakes are high, right? One failure, NASA. One failure is catastrophic. So we'll look at that and we kind of track those small failures and say, okay, um, how can we avert this? How can we make sure that that Swiss cheese theory of everything lining up doesn't? How can we best protect that? And when that is a great takeaway from after our post incident review, our formal ones, or a formal after action review, where we could look at those and say, okay, let's make sure we get a tip from training out on this. Let's make sure that we talk about this at education day and others. Sometimes we'll even make a video on it to make sure, hey, make sure that everybody's seeing this, because we've seen this at 3 fires now.
And
Yeah.
and what's the way? Like I mean, you've built that through the organization. You built that through your training. What about somebody who doesn't maybe have that their organization maybe isn't that strong with that? I mean, company level do it, personal level do it, right? Like you have to start it somewhere, correct?
Yeah, well, so the best time to plant a tree was 100 years ago. The second best time is today, right? So any
Yeah.
type of training program, whether you're not training enough, whether you don't have a good program, whatever it is, we can do better, right? And just start today, whatever that is. If you don't have a training culture, well, change it. Start it today, right? And so the FDNY, we average somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 serious structural fires per day. So we have a lot of experience, and we're able to capture that a lot faster than other departments.
Hmm.
But you have people out there sharing their experiences, so you can see whether it's all of the major publications, the internet, Twitter, LinkedIn, all these are full of stories that you can see, and it doesn't take long to capture what's going on in the American Fire Service. Just take a look at your Twitter feed, and you'll know exactly what the issues are in no time. Whether any of the publications, the secret list, all of these have great information, and they have their finger on the pulse. So it doesn't take long. Take a look at all the monthly magazines that come out, and you'll see common themes
Yeah.
in every single one of them.
Yeah. What do you see? You see leadership. You see uh,
Yeah. So I mean, leadership.
experience in some case or
Yeah.
lack of it.
Yeah. So I mean, experiences. That's the age-old problem, right? The war years ago, everybody had experience, so there's not as many fires, which is a good thing. But we have the advantage of YouTube. Sometimes it's a disadvantage, right? Because of the comments you see sometimes. But
Yeah.
but we can transfer these experiences, so you could have experiences. Years ago, it was hard to It was harder to transfer an experience because we didn't have the video footage of it. We didn't have the social media where we could learn so much about it. There could be a fire in California tonight, or yesterday, and I learn about it. And today, I may even be on a Zoom call with the incident commander of that fire. I have sat in the past 6 months, through the Seattle Fire Department. I've sat in on 4 or 5 times where they bring in an incident commander of a large scale incident, and I'm learning from those same experiences.
Right.
So
And with that, like you have a project that you're working on, the 30 with Chief Goldfeder, 30 Fires book, correct? That
yeah,
takes
that's
those fires that you want everyone to take something from and learn from that you have as well. And those 30 come from all over the country, correct? And I mean, what are the criteria that you guys are using to bring those together?
Well, so it's 30 Fires You Must Know is what the title of it is going to be, and it'll be released in 2023. And so it's I speak to him an awful lot, and I'm frustrated when I speak to firefighters and I say the Station nightclub, Vandalia Avenue, the Wall
Yeah.
Bombs fire, and they look at you like they don't know what you're talking about, right? So we have taken 30 fires, and we actually started with a much larger pool because there's a lot of different lessons that can be learned from the book, but we needed the authors of the chapters. The primary authors are different people that either operated at the fire in some capacity, maybe they were an incident commander, maybe they were a firefighter at the time, or they have some firsthand knowledge of it from their department. So we're seeing it through the eyes of that particular individual, right? Which is very different. I read a lot of the fatal fire investigation, near misses, all of that type of stuff. I'm familiar with a lot of fires. I've learned a lot more about other fires. So the chapters that we have complete are just fascinating. Some of the authors of some of these chapters are just incredible. It's going to be a great book. It'll be in their own words, the lessons learned and what you should be drilling on.
What's the biggest surprise that you've found from just those fires? I mean, because you've reviewed every single one of them and learned something, but obviously when you're going back again, you're like, oh, I never connected this or saw this. I mean, what was one of the things that really stood out to you?
How different, depending on where you were at the incident, what you were doing, how different your lens may be, and the generational impact that a line of duty death has, both on the department and on the family members. Some of the authors were friends with the firefighters that passed away, are still friends with the survivors, and it's really just, like I said, some of the chapters you'll be blown away and you'll learn something, and we're grateful that we have so many people that were willing to write chapters, and we already know we're going to have to do a second book. And probably the best part of this is that we're not making money on this. All of the proceeds to this are going to be donated to several different charities that we're working out. Actually, we just notified the charities. We're waiting for them to respond back to us that they
Awesome.
right, because they have to accept it. Which of
Right,
course,
right.
they
They better, right? Yeah, yeah. We
yeah.
got others that you could probably, I'm sure others will stand in line for it if they don't accept. But
Yeah, but we're pretty excited about it, and I guarantee you, you read it, you will learn. Like I said, for me, as a more than 30-year student of our profession, I learned something from every one of these articles, every one of these individuals. It's eye opening, and it's going to be a great. It'll be a great book, no doubt about it.
and
Can't
you
wait to
talked
see
about
it.
you talked about the emotional side of stuff too. Like I don't know, you've been there, you've seen a lot. We just in talking with you, I can see the emotion and just the passion that you have. I mean, how do you and how have you over the years, dealt with it, just the emotional challenges that we have? I mean, you've seen a lot, you've been on a lot of commands, been command of a lot of fires, and you've seen a lot of things. Like, how do you personally, deal with that side of stuff? Especially when you read these, I'm sure it kind of touches you a little bit, right?
Yeah, and I think it's having a good support network, right? I have a wonderful family that's always there for me.
Hmm.
Our firehouse family is critically important, and to talk about it, right? You come back from something and you talk about it, making sure that we have a pretty robust counseling service unit, and we make sure that we call them out when we need them right away. But it's really just communicating, and it all starts with having a support network, both somebody at home that you could speak to that understands it, and also the in the firehouse. Because quite frankly, we don't do enough to include our families in what we do. We talk about our fire service family and that our families are part of that and important to it, but I don't know if we tell them that enough. So I will when I see a firefighter spouse or or their children or something, I try and speak to them and let them know how, and tell my firefighters that we value your family members as well, because they are part of our family, an important part. And if something's going on at home, they're going to see it long before that, possibly long before we will. And I think so. The motivation, even for this book, and for when I write some of the articles that I have authored, is we repeat lessons and wind up having firefighters die from very similar instances so often that why can't we learn a lesson that somebody paid the price for, maybe thousands of miles away? Like, every department doesn't need to repeat the lessons, and we have to find a way to get these lessons out there earlier, to know that, hey, we're seeing this problem, whatever it is, and we're doing that with lithium-ion batteries now. We've seen so many of them, and it's just making sure that we're educating people, that they know, hey, here's a watch out, that this is what we're seeing, whatever that is. I mean, you look at bowstring truss, right? And I think it was in Missouri, a couple of firefighters, 3 or 4, in 1969, died in a collapse of one of those. And then we have Hackensack, and we have wall bombs first, and then we have Hackensack, and and I think Chicago after. Like, that's a lot of firefighters stacked up, right? We need to find a way to learn these lessons
before the fatalities in some
before
cases,
the fatality,
right? Yes,
because and hopefully before any fatality, but certainly, and that's the importance. Hey, when a firefighter is killed in the line of duty, we have to learn from it, because it may not, the next time it may injure a bunch of firefighters, but it also may kill more. Let's make sure that we try and cut that off at the pass, and that's part of what this 30 fires you must know is certainly about.
Yeah. And we talk about the emotional side. We also talk about we've talked about cancer behind the scenes too, because that's the one thing, unfortunately, we as we mentioned, and I agree 100%, family needs to be included a lot with our academies. Family needs to understand some of the stuff we're seeing, because they can identify when there's a change quicker than probably our own crews can. Because when we go in that firehouse, right, we try to put on, hey, nothing's bothering me today, I know I got a job to do. But that might come out at home a lot faster and a lot quicker, and family to be able to identify that. So the emotional side, but also then, and you've been a very good advocate for the cancer side too, because, you talk about learning from fires. That not just includes how we respond to them, how we put them out, but what we do before, during, and after on a total health standpoint, right? And we missed the boat on that for many years. And now you're a very good advocate, and I can't thank you enough, because I read a lot of the things that you've done to help on the cancer initiative too, and obviously you've seen that through your experiences at FDNY, right? And through your research, correct? Like, that's really what kind of opened your eyes to it. How many people are dying of this? How many of your friends, right? You've experienced a lot of friends, and so that's the other side of training that you're really trying to push as well, correct? Like, that's, you're very passionate about that, and again, we thank you for that.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and because it matters, right? Because we're losing our friends to occupational cancer. I just authored an article on it not too long ago, and today, actually this afternoon, I got a message from a firefighter down south who told me that he appreciates the article. He just finished reading it, and he's midway through his treatment for pancreatic cancer. So it's real. And that those messages, those people that reach out to me, it matters. And we have to do all we can, which is why every couple of months I seem to put out another article related to cancer. Listen, I would love to write articles on stretching a hose line and how to best put out a fire. I could talk tactics all day long. But cancer in the fire service is one of the greatest threats to our profession that we have ever seen.
Yeah.
And the IARC designation, right, to changing firefighting to a Group 1 carcinogen, if that doesn't open your eyes, if you're a leader in the fire service and that does not open your eyes, you should retire. It's that simple.
Right, right. What are you reading? You're not reading anything. You're obviously somewhere under a rock because that's it. I mean, right. That is a in your face kind of declaration. You know, along with the current research. Do you mind if I ask? Like, I know that we've talked it before. I mean, uh, through your all of your experiences with FDNY. I mean, how many people do you know working on the mound and just the fire? I mean, how many do you know that have been impacted by cancer just around you in your immediate area there in FDNY? Like thousands, you would think that you would know.
Yeah, so I'll broaden that out, right? So not just cancer, because cancer gets the headline, right? Because
Yeah,
we're approaching the same number of firefighters to occupational illness dying as was killed on that day, 343. But it is rare to find a firefighter who was on the FDNY on September 11th, 2001, that does not have an ailment related to their exposure there. Even if they're living with it, even if they're surviving with it, it is incredibly rare to not find somebody that doesn't have some type of ailment from it.
physical and or mental or both. Correct. Like,
Well, certainly both, but
yeah,
even just the physical aspect of it, mental for sure, right? I mean, anybody that was on the job for that dreads when September comes around on the calendar.
yeah, yeah. And is that? I mean, what? One of the questions that I like to ask is, I mean, what fuels your passion? I mean, obviously, you are so passionate and just about making everybody better. That's why I was so excited when you said, "Yeah, I'll do this," because this is exactly what we're about. Like, you are about making yourself better, and then using what you learn to make those around you better. But what fuels that passion for you?
Yeah, so I love what I do. I love being a firefighter. I was exposed. My brother joined my local volunteer department when I was 7. It's the only thing I've ever wanted to do, and I've learned from so many people writing for the different publications and whatever through the years. And now, I reached a point in my career where I could give back and do that. And what fuels it is that I love the people I work with. I have great people that I work with every day. I go to a firehouse. I wind up spending a couple of hours there. And they don't kick me out. They usually invite me to stay for dinner. And
Yeah,
quite frankly, I wish that when I came on a job, and I said this, I speak at our education day. We had about 25 people this morning, and I spoke to them for about a half hour, 45 minutes. And I conclude by saying I've done some stupid things in my career. And because I didn't have somebody sitting in front of me telling me that these things, aren't, you need to not do this, right?
hmm
Whatever it is. But part of it is we know now, right? We have the amount of research that's been done and our access to that, whether it's you go on the First Responder Center for Excellence website, where a lot of that is posted, the Firefighter Cancer Support Network. There's so much information out there. I mean, if you Googled my name, you'd probably find 7 different articles on cancer on it. Our tips from training that we put, all these different things. We have to make sure that we're educating everybody to the hazards, because as bad as it seems, it's mostly about personal responsibility, personal hygiene, and just being better, doing the things that you need to do to best protect yourself now, because your future self will thank you. And I became a grandpa not too long ago, a little under a year ago. I know I look young to be a grandpa, but
how is that possible? Right? Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it is amazing. And I want to be there for my granddaughter for as many years as I can possibly be. And I tell that to young firefighters who they may not even be thinking about being a mom or a dad yet, right?
Yeah.
But think beyond that. Think about your retirement years and what you want to do. Visualize yourself when you're 50, 60, and 70 and what you want to be doing. And that might be going to more fires. That might be being a grandma or a grandpa.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that might mean a bucket list vacation. Whatever it is, use that to motivate you to best protect yourself.
And so you kind of went right into our next thing. I always try to put some guests on the hot seat and ask some quick questions, right? Like, you know, and one of them is first question is, what's your biggest regret?
Oh man. Um, I I don't think I have any regrets in my career. I love the places I've worked. I've worked with great people in great firehouses. Yeah. I mean, if I had to pick one, maybe when I was a firefighter after September 11th, I had an opportunity. I was in Squad 270, and I absolutely loved it there. And I had an opportunity to go to Rescue One in Manhattan, and I didn't go because I wouldn't have been there that long, and I didn't think it would have been fair to the company. But others that I know that went for a short period of time, they went. Um, and but even that, it's really not. It's really not a regret.
Right.
I've worked, like I said, I've worked with amazing people, and I
Yeah.
wouldn't change any of that.
I think it's worked out pretty well for you.
I
Yeah.
would
So
agree with that.
far.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. So now part of this is a rare thing. Janelle has a hot seat question. Janelle, by the way, she you obviously are a special guest for us because Janelle does not like to speak very much. Like she usually has to calm me down a little bit in order to get in, but she's got a good question for you on this one. So
I've got two questions for you, actually.
uh,
One's a little more serious, but I'm just curious what the best single piece of advice that you ever received from a fellow fire service leader and how that impacted your career.
Hmm. Yeah. So without a doubt, the best advice is twofold, and it was from one of my first captains, and he said, "Read something fire related every day, learn something from everybody, and importantly, sometimes you learn what not to do." And it's really pretty amazing what you can learn from people, especially when you think about even the stuff what not to do, right? It's to use the phrase from Yogi Berra, you can observe a lot by watching,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's really true. You see, right? You see what works. Think about the best leaders that you've ever had in your career. Um, Oftentimes they're enthusiastic. Like I like to say, it's enthusiastic leadership that makes people want to be like you and follow you, right? You have to be knowledgeable what you're doing, but the FDNY firefighter is incredibly knowledgeable, right? So I would say we already have that, right? So our knowledge is for the most part there. But then what do you do with that? How do you conduct yourself? What is it that you do? And you could see that in some of the leaders. We are incredibly fortunate in my career, at every level of my career. I have had exceptional examples of top-notch leadership of people who I wanted to be like.
That's fantastic. That's
yeah.
great.
But
Perfect.
and I like how you said that. It's a big mistake. It's huge to not look at the other side of that, like what not to do sometimes, right?
Mhm.
Uh, and sometimes we get frustrated and we don't think that way. We just think about I got to get out of this situation. But um, I think you would also be. It's safe to assume like you can take knowledge from every situation, right? Whether it's good, it's bad, and people sometimes that knowledge is what not to do instead of what to do, right? And
Yeah. And that's especially true when we think about the soft skills, right? The people skills
yeah,
that, we can also think about people in our career that we like, wow, that person, they are a great fire officer, a great fire chief, but they have no knowledge on how to treat people, right? And you wonder, like, you see those people, right? And you say, wow, that person, people would follow that chief or that officer, whatever, with anything they do, but they don't because they lack that ability to communicate.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Those soft
Without being
skills.
able to, yeah, without being able to transfer that knowledge and communicate, it's it's not it's just there. It's a waste.
It's like
So
a doctor with poor bedside manner.
yeah,
You
exactly.
know, they've got all
Yeah,
the knowledge. They might have been top of their class at med school, but if you can't talk to your patients in a way that they feel seen and heard, makes it a lot harder for that interaction.
And
Well,
both are important. On the fire ground, I don't care if you know how to communicate with people, right? But the fire ground is part of it, right? So you want well-rounded leaders, right? That's what it comes down to. And there's a difference, right? There's a lot of stuff that happens in the firehouse, in the EMS station, and wherever else you're working, that you got to be able to diffuse and manage and take care of. And some people don't have the proper skill set to deal with that, and that's a challenge in the fire service in general, right? You see that all the time in headlines.
Yeah, big time. So Janelle, you got one more for him.
Oh yeah, and we
Okay.
ask the hard-hitting questions here on
Yep,
the
yep.
Better Every Shift podcast. So, what I would like to know is, at the station, what was your favorite meal to cook?
Well, so I was definitely more of
Or
an eater.
just eat?
Yeah, I was much
Yeah,
more
right.
of an
Yeah.
eater. So that's yeah, that is a hard hitting question, and I'm lucky. Thankfully, I'm prepared to answer that.
All right.
Because even now, when I visit a firehouse, like I'll show up, they'll be like, "All right, Chief, come for dinner. We're gonna eat around 9 o'clock." And I show up, and they're making homemade manigot, or they're making some like crazy extravagant meal, and I'm just like, I just want a half a chicken. I want chicken cutlet palm. I want the staple firehouse meals because I don't get them that often anymore. I'm like, save the extravagant meals for for another night. I just want the staple firehouse meals. And there's nothing like the half a chicken or breaded chicken cutlets. This just a hamburger for lunch. Just what we normally have in a firehouse.
I can attest to that too. I did always hear a story. Chief Salka tells a story. Do they still eat on those big old plates in the firehouses there in New York? Or
Oh yeah, yeah.
do
And they
they?
load it up. It's enough for a family of four, but we feed it one per firefighter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. Like we also eat very, very fast. A little too fast, I think too. I mean, those are for another podcast. Like we can go down that whole thing about how then our bellies don't catch up to our mouths, and then you go into how you only keep as much food on your plate that you can fit in your mask and all that stuff, right? Like you get those
We eat
stories.
too much, too late, and and too much, right? Too
Yeah.
much, too late. It's
Too fast. Too
too
much,
fast.
too late, too fast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yep.
Because then because so many times the meal gets ruined because you're going out on a run, right? Or it gets delayed. So
Yeah.
all right, the meal's ready. Let's eat, right? And then next thing you know, you're out the door 5-10 minutes later, and so it's interesting, right? When you get that run timed like that, then you don't eat too much because then you realize, "Oh, I'm pretty full." And you
Right.
have half a plate. You come back and you just throw out the rest.
Yeah, if you get the one in you, you're good.
Yeah.
And that's the key. You got to wait like 10 minutes to 10 to 15 minutes in order for your stomach to catch up. But and that leads into other health issues. And I think we're going to have to bring you back to talk about, there's a whole nother avenue of stuff that you're also, researching into the wellness side of stuff. We talked about cancer. We could come back and have you talk about that if you would have us, or would you come back again? I promise I'll wear Tigger if I need to, just to
If
get
you're
you
wearing
back
Tigger,
again.
I'm on. Then I'm in. If you're doing that, I'm in.
All right. I think we got to do it at a seminar, so I'll bring it to the seminar. We'll have other people around us, and they'll really start to think, what in the heck are these guys all about here?
That's perfect.
But I can't thank you enough. I know Janelle and I were super excited, and kind of got me out of my game. Normally I'm telling dad jokes. I did embed one movie quote, Janelle. I don't know if you got it, but we try to do that just to keep our listeners all listening. And then we just end with anything else you want, really that firefighter, maybe that firefighter that's not fired up to learn, maybe that they're maybe going through a little hard time where they look and they don't feel their organization supporting them. And, what advice do you have for them, and what can we leave them with to really fire them up to get better every shift and to really put that effort into it? What do you have for a parting kind of piece of advice?
Yeah, and unfortunately, I get that a lot, where I hear from firefighters that are like, my leadership doesn't care about training. They don't care about us. We're on our own. And so, and even they may have a toxic environment at work where other firefighters aren't into the job the way they are. And this is what I tell them. It's okay to love the job. I love my job. I love my volunteer department. I love the people that I work with, that I volunteer with. And I do it for a career. It's like my hobby as well. I mean, I'm all in all the time. And the bottom line is a well-trained, physically fit firefighter that understands the why, not only protects himself, but and obviously the residents and citizens that he's sworn to protect, but they protect their family. Whether they're protecting their income as a career firefighter or it protects their income as a volunteer firefighter where they have a full-time job. The bottom line is if you're injured or you're dead, you're doing no justice and you're not bringing anything to your family. So we owe it to ourselves and anybody that we love and relies on us to be better every day, every run, every shift that you go to work or you get on that fire truck, because the idea is they are counting on you to come back and not be injured or killed.
Right. And do everything you can to minimize that risk, right? Personally, every single day.
That's right.
Train. Yep. And if you lose that, just listen again to what Chief just said there and go on to Fire Rescue One and read an article or two. And I'll tell you just from my experience and watching you present, I just every day now I've been doing that 10 minutes a day, and it's really helped me because 10 has turned into 30, has turned into 40, has turned into a podcast, for gosh sakes, thanks to Janelle. But I've read more and been more fired up now. And you're a big part of that. And we can't thank you enough. And we'd love to have you on again and to motivate us and keep us going. And, we always part with, sometimes there's knowledge around us, there's motivation around us, but sometimes you really have to look and dig for it. But really what life is about is taking that when you find it and using that to be better every shift. And Chief, thank you so much for being with us, and look forward to having you back.